Hey guys and gals, Kevin Bupp here. I've got some very exciting news I'd like to share with you before we jump into today's show. Now, after closing on Fund 4's first acquisition of a $50 million institutional grade mobile home park, we're adding a second irreplaceable piece of real estate to the portfolio, and it's coming into the fund with over $1.5 million of built-in equity for our investors day one. Now, when I say irreplaceable, I really do mean it. I mean, this is an affordable yet high-end waterfront mobile home park located in the Columbus, Ohio market. Quite literally, every single mobile home on this property is right on the lake, each with its very own personal boat dock, meaning a very high demand for affordable weekend getaway options, as well as year-round housing for working Americans. This is a true unicorn of a property, and you will not see another one like this come around again. It really is a one of a kind. A few other aspects worth noting. This park is producing stable and predictable cash flow day one. We're acquiring it with an excellent in-place Freddie Mac loan at a 3.3% interest rate for the next 8.5 years. This also includes a period of interest-only payments. Again, the simple supply and demand dynamics here are enough to get excited about. This is affordable lakefront real estate for both the working American families as well as folks looking to lock down a reasonably priced waterfront escape. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. Visit investwithsunrise.com to register for our webinar and learn about all the wonderful aspects of this property going into Fund 4. Again, that's investwithsunrise.com. Now, let's get on to the show. Hey guys, Kevin Bupp here, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. Our mission is to help you build and maintain massive amounts of cash flow through income-producing real estate investments. Now, our guest for this week's show is real estate investment expert, Anthony Scavo. Now, Anthony is the president and COO of Basis Industrial, a privately held and vertically integrated real estate owner and operator based in Boca Raton, Florida. Now, Anthony has nearly 30 years of real estate development and construction experience and has been at the helm of each of the company's transactions from pre-acquisition to closing and every stage in between. Now, Basis has deep roots in the self-storage and industrial sectors. It currently owns over 4 million square feet of self-storage and industrial real estate and is scheduled to close and or complete another 2 million square feet in 2024. And so with that, guys, it's an honor to welcome, I guess, for today's show, Anthony Scavo. Anthony, how you doing today?
Not bad, Kevin. How are you?
I'm doing great. Excited to have you. Excited to learn a little bit more about you, your background, as well as Basis and what it is you guys do. So how about we start there? I gave you that brief introduction. I know there's a lot more to that 30 years that you've been in the industry. So tell us a little more about yourself, if you would.
Yeah, so my family's been in construction all my life, since before they came here from Italy. I started working at a company called, a family actually called the Left Rack Family in New York. They're probably in the top 10 of family-owned real estate companies in the world. During my tenure there, from when I started when I was 17, right after high school, I worked my way through doing physical construction, laboring, sheetrock, taping, all that kind of stuff. I worked my way up. I ended up running the development and construction for them. Now, it was a little different than I do now. There was no talk of IRR, cash flow. When it's family money, it's kind of interesting. It's more about, is what you're building worth more when you finished than when you started, right? So if they made value, you're basically creating value for them. So it's a little bit a different kind of metric than most people are used to that are probably listening to you today in like the syndication world, if you will.
Sure.
So, for them, I built, probably 7,000 apartments in multifamily, 7 million square feet of office space, hotels, office buildings, small big box, condos, everything. So the good thing and the bad thing about working for someone like that is when you're their construction expert, the development expert, you're building a pizza store for a tenant or you're building a 60-story building. There's no one else who does it. They ask you because you're the guy who's supposed to know everything about construction development. So that's what I did. But listen, it was a great learning experience. You'll never get an experience like that, learning all different types of the industry, building, development, management, even, and things like that. It was very, very unique, and I'm very thankful for it. And then I went to one other company between where I am now, and then I had that job for my first 26 years. So it's a lot. I never looked for another job. I went to another family-owned company in New York, and I did actually the pre-construction on the tallest building on the west coast of Florida. And then an executive recruiter found me for the guys I'm with now, and that will let me segue into Basis pretty easily. Yeah. So with Basis, my partner, Steve Garchek and Jay Massman, actually founded a company called Miami City Self Storage in 2012. And that was, if you want to call the precursor of Basis. They built about 18 self-storage buildings from 2012 to 2019. They exited those in one transaction in 2021 to a partner of theirs that is still our partner today. They did. It was an amazing return. A couple of $100 million. The transaction was. It was great for them. They brought in my third partner, Dan Weinstein, in early 2019, and then me in 2021, with the idea of rebuilding that self-storage portfolio and doing it again. Just rinse and repeat, do the same thing. It worked once, do it again. And listen, we have about, in the next probably 18 months, we'll have about 2 million square feet. We'll have a 2 million square foot self-storage portfolio. We have been doing that a lot less lately. As you know, from the whirlwinds in the market, you heard rents are dropping, it's harder to build, construction costs are going up, turn on cost isn't as good. And we actually noticed that less about the rents, more about the cost going up and the inability to find quality sites in early 2021 when I first joined. And that's why we segued into multi-tenant industrial assets. There was a lot of similarities to storage. There was small users, business users that were very sticky. They never left the space. And we started acquiring that. And, since 2021 till now, figure about almost 3 full years, we've acquired over 4 million square feet of multi-tenant industrial assets. And that takes us to today. And in the self-storage world, we still do it, probably do about 2 or 3 a year, if at most. We're very selective. Listen, one of my partners loves to say, right? Self-storage started non-institutional, fragmented, mom and pop owners all over the country. And what happened was institutions came in, the Blackstones, the GICs, and they bought all of it. They made it into a very institutional asset class with very good cash flow. Speaking of your topic, and that's why people love it, right? It's a reliable cash flow segment of the market, right? So, but when that happens, competition comes in, sites get scared. A lot of people use the same metrics, and you start getting into that. You're opening stores 3 at a time, fighting each other for lower rents, which isn't a good business model, right? Yeah. So what happened was it was overbuilt, rates were low. That's why you're hearing that bad economic news about self-storage. We're lucky. I guess we're lucky and also unlucky at the same time because we picked markets that are almost impossible to develop self-storage in. But we have some deals that are going on 3 years in development. Thank God we have the wherewithal and the capital to back those kind of moves and spend $1 million on a deal before you close on the land. I mean, other guys can't do that. We can, thank God, and we've been doing it. So I think our deals are probably going to be still successful because they're in markets where there is no other self-storage.
Right.
It's a need, So it's like, but as you can see, it takes 2.5 years to get them approved. So it's you're in that kind of barrier to entry market, which is helpful, but it's also there's a big barrier to entry. You have to conquer that too. So that's where we are with self-storage.
Like give me an example of a few markets that have just a massive barrier to entry where you guys are finding yourselves, 2-3 years already into a project.
A lot of it's in the Northeast, Upper Westchester, Rockland County, Orange County, like places in New York where it's just, historically hard to get things done. I'll give you an example. We had a site under contract in Sleepy Hollow, New York. Everyone's heard of Sleepy Hollow, the Headless Horseman, right? All that stuff. So, the supply there was like a 3, the national average is about 6 or 7, very low supply. The rents are very high. It's an affluent area. Toll Brothers actually developing a whole number of apartments there. So smaller units, people need storage, right? So we went there. We took a site that wasn't so aesthetically pleasing to the nail like today. So we thought the town would bend and change the rule that there's no self-storage allowed. We went there. We had on the contract for a year. We spoke to the town. They're like, maybe a beer garden would work better. And we're like, well, we don't build beer gardens. I go, we build self-storage buildings. And they're like, maybe a restaurant. I'm like, sorry, still not going. And they kept having a dialogue with us, asking for different uses, but it was replacing an old dilapidated granite quarry in the middle of town that looks horrible. But that's the rap that self-storage gets, and it's kind of comical. People rather have they rather wait out the guy to retire or die or sell to someone else than let a self-storage building come in, which is a new, nice, modern-looking building. But they don't really want that in the center of a town.
How about a self-storage with a beer garden on the roof?
They were like that. I think something like that on the first floor would have done it. But you
Yeah.
want to laugh to get those institutional buyers. A lot of them don't like another use tied to it.
Yeah. Hey, buddy, you're speaking my language, Anthony. So we're in the manufactured housing space. So when you talk about the NIMBY syndrome, not my backyard. I mean, like that's written all over our asset class, right? Like they want to fix the affordable housing crisis, and we literally have the answer to it. And these communities don't look anything like what they envision, right? Like drug, sex, and rock and roll, like the worst element of human beings. That's just not the. I mean, there are places like that, but that's not what we own. That's not what what we have in our portfolio, and that's not what we pitch. But that's what they envision, and so for that reason, they would rather have any other use than that of a manufactured housing community anywhere near town, especially in the middle of town. That wouldn't work.
Everyone who's in a little, call it a needed asset class that's a little bit outside the norm, people get that from a town because they don't know what to expect either.
Yeah.
Manufactured housing, low income housing, workforce housing, self storage. Like the only thing people like is glitzy retail entertainment. Then they like it. Or I mean, some places are against multifamily now too. They just don't want more
Yeah.
people. That's the new thing. They just don't want more people in general. And listen, they have a right to do that, but you know, a self storage building, in my opinion, and this is not to sell our use, there's barely anyone that goes there. It doesn't use
Yeah.
utilities. It doesn't use the school system. It pays taxes and it makes no noise. I mean, that's a pretty good neighbor to have, in my opinion. So, I mean, that's our case to a lot of these guys, but a lot of them just don't want that as a focal point of their main street, if you will.
I mean, is it? I mean, really, it's just what they're envisioning, just a big metal box, right? Like a
Yeah, that's
metal warehouse, which you and I both know. I mean, there's many markets that have put requirements in place that they put stucco on the outside and make it blend into the natural landscape surrounding it. You can make a metal building pretty, and anyway, I get your pain, my friend. I get your
yeah.
pain. You'd mentioned. I want to back up real quick before it loses my mind, before it slips my mind. You'd mentioned you helped develop. You were part of the tallest building on the west coast of Florida. I live in the west coast of Florida, but I'm not sure
Oh,
exactly what the tallest building is. What is the tallest building on the west
it's going
coast
to
of
be
Florida?
400 Central in St. Pete.
Okay, okay, I did not know that.
Katsimatidis, I'm the guy who worked for Red Apple Group. He's developing it. They're all great guys. They're doing an amazing job. Suffolk Construction is the GC, and they should have it. I did all the pre-construction on it for them. They even kept me on a year after I left, helping them consult on it. It's going to be a great building.
How tall?
It's going to be like 467 feet or 500, something like that. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
over 600 feet. I'm sorry.
yeah. And I don't even know what the second largest would be. I don't know how much that trumps whatever the tallest building is at
I'm sure
present
you'll
time.
see.
But
I'm sure you'll see it
yeah,
when it's there. I mean, there's very high
yeah.
floors.
Sure, sure. Well, good deal. So talk to me about just, obviously the last year and a half has been a little bit challenging, just navigating the volatility in the rates and the market. Just I guess from Basis's perspective, you guys have it sounds like you have a good bit of liquidity. You guys been able to kind of maintain pace even with some of the challenges that we've been, a lot of folks have been facing in the debt markets. But just I guess maybe speak in a generic sense as to like what are some of the things you guys have done to continue progressing when some others have kind of retracted and backed out of the market.
Yeah, I mean, listen, my partners and I have a good reputation in the industry, right? We have a lot of banking relationships. We have a lot of lender relationships. That helps, of course, right? We have liquidity that helps. We have good reputation that helps. I mean, and not to say we're geniuses, but the product type we're buying, this multi-tenant industrial, is a pretty well yielding product, cash flowing day one.
Yeah.
So there's really not many things for lenders to loan money on that's in that, call it in that zone right now, that you actually have cash flow day one,
Yeah.
and it's an accretive cap rate compared to the debt rate. So you're getting close, you're almost positive leverage on a lot of these assets. So it's pretty good for a lender when you're only asking for 55% LTC.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're in a safe position.
Just for clarity, are we talking like flex space when you say multi-tenanted industrial
Yeah.
buildings? I mean, is
Listen,
that more? I guess paint the picture of what
yeah,
these
I'm not gonna
what your
make you laugh.
typical project looks like.
You want to
Size of
laugh?
the
Yeah, yeah.
units.
I've heard so many people call this stuff so many different things: flex, retail flex, office flex, small
Okay.
bay, shallow bay, tiny bay. It's basically an industrial building where one tenant doesn't make up more than 5% of the portfolio when
Okay.
you average out the tenants. So if there's 100 tenants, 100,000 square feet, 1,000 square feet a tenant, that's good. 100 tenants, 500,000 square feet, you're still getting close to the most. See what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
5,000 square feet a tenant, That's about, now you're talking about the percentage starts getting a little too much. So our thesis on this is that if two tenant leaves, nothing happens to us. We like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we could raise rents as at will. You lose some, you get new ones in, fix up the spaces, give them new spaces, and it works well.
And these are probably typically what, 3 to 5 year leases on average?
In Florida, so most of the stuff we have is in Florida and Texas. We've been signing up to 7-year leases in Florida, some 10-year leases, but most of them are averaging 3 to 5. We still try to sign 25 to 30% of tenants on 1-year leases just to have that, the tenants that we could always grow rent faster in that market if we see something change. And it's also people we might not want to keep that long. If someone's like, okay, it's a photographer that really doesn't have a big business model or something like that, some kind of like service use that we're not sure is going to do well in this park, we'll give them a year lease to try it out. They might not have any credit, but let's give them a year lease. So what? They put a 2-month security deposit, we'll check it out. And if they do well, then we'll give them a 2 or 3 lease. So that's what we do with some of the other tenants. And it works, it works well. I mean, listen, in Orlando proper, some of the stuff is very, like, you'd be surprised. It's like Frontier Airlines, big name tenants, DHL, and then some of it's, you'll never heard of one name in the whole place. So it's like, it's all different buying. But the main thing is that there's a lot of tenants spread over a certain amount of square feet.
And then you guys are doing ground up development, correct?
No. Ground up development and self-storage, we're buying cash flowing.
Okay, you're buying existing. Understood.
Existing cash flowing on the multi-tenant industrial side.
What's the competition like nowadays in that sector with the product that you're looking for specifically?
Yeah, there's a couple of guys doing what we do in and around Florida and Texas. There's not many. I mean, a lot of guys are getting into it now. It's very granular, so it scares away a lot of the institutional. It's basically like one of my partners loves to say, it's like self-storage was 30 years ago. It really is. It's not, it's fragmented. There's no one really. I mean, the first big Blackstone bought Public Storage Business Parks. So Public Storage, the company that they had the owner himself spun off a division, PS Business Parks. And that was the first small bay, call it aggregator, if you will. And he had about, I think it was over 10 million square feet. They sold it to Blackstone for, some crazy number, like over 350, 400 square foot. And they bought it all because they got the platform, they got one big buy. So no one's done anything like that except them, really. So the idea is to mimic that and try to aggregate it to something that scale, 10, 12 million square feet with a platform, which we self-manage ourselves, based on our management company. Everyone on the same lease, everyone on the same rules, the same structure, so we institutionalize something that isn't institutionalized.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's a lot of opportunity in the sector, but I guess maybe, to the other end of the spectrum, I mean, what would you perceive to be the biggest threats? If you had to do a SWOT analysis, what are some of the biggest threats to this particular niche in the industrial space?
I mean, listen, equity is always a problem, finding, because we want to expand really quickly. I mean, we bought 4 million square feet in, 2.5 years.
Are you mostly retail equity or
we have
institutional?
We have everything. We have retail equity. We have some private equity investors. We have some large family offices.
Okay.
I mean, the next step, of course, is to get some kind of, separate account investments, some pension fund things, something cheaper money, core money. So that's what we're looking for right now. And the idea is that, the next tranche will hopefully be, we bought the first 4 million square feet with a couple of different PE partners. So the idea is the next one to buy a 1 LP partner, recap the first one, and then keep going until we get to, 8 to 12 million square feet.
Yeah. Talk to me about some of the biggest changes that will have to happen within your organization, maybe from a manpower perspective in order to get from where you're at today to where you want to be in the next 5 years based on growth.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's tough. You gotta, I mean, my wife gets me, I work till 10 o'clock at night some nights, and that's most nights. And there's a lot of people, listen, when I started here, right, there was 3 employees, excluding my partners. Now we have 43, so the company's growing. And when you grow, there's always growing pains. You can't help that if you're a kid, if you're in a company. And in this market, I don't know what people are talking about, that the economy's not doing well. You can't even find an employee. So it's got to be have work, or they just don't want to work. It's very hard to find quality employees. It's very hard to find people that want to be in an entrepreneurial workplace where it's very linear. You have great chances to advancement, but it's also, you got to work really hard because everyone knows who you are.
Yeah.
There's no hiding. There's no hiding behind like, corporate America sitting at a desk. Here, everyone knows if you're doing something wrong, they know you're not working, you're not pulling your slack. You got to be pulled up. So I mean, that's a
Yeah.
little bit of a, it's a little bit of an issue finding people that are in the right place in their career where they want to work like that, and that they're sophisticated and have enough experience to really excel. So that's the difficulty right now.
Yeah, interesting. I feel like we've maybe seen not the opposite of that just over the past year and a half, bringing in additional talent, new talent. Whereas, you know, 2-3 years ago during the height of COVID, I mean, it was nearly impossible to attract quality. Number one, people didn't want to work then either, right? But then on top of that, most folks were getting free money from the government. It just everyone was kind of complacent in what they were doing, and it was very difficult to pull any talent over. But we've had some great hiring opportunities over the past year and a half where I don't feel like we would have had those same ones 3 years ago during the midst of COVID. So, but yeah, no, it's always a challenge, right? It's not even just finding folks, it's finding the right folks, right? Getting
That's right.
the right people on the bus and the wrong people off. The ones that are true core value fits that
Yeah.
not just have that entrepreneurial spirit, but like share your values and your mission, right? Like what it is you guys want to achieve and can buy into it and actually make it a part of their DNA. Like that's the part that's incredibly difficult, right? And it's, one out of, I don't know, 1,000 people that you probably, run across that actually would ever fit that mold.
Yeah, you got to think, and you got to act and think like an owner. That's what we say, right? You got to really be like that kind of person, really want to strive in an organization, especially when you're very linear. But Kevin, I think what I was trying to say is like, remember, we're building out the property management company with the development company, so that's where it's been the hard. The property. Listen, we in self storage, extra space of public storage managed it for us. They're pretty good at that. I mean, that's why they're
I
extra
would
space
say
of public
so.
storage. That's why they're extra space of public storage.
Yeah.
But for us, we didn't find anyone that really excelled in this multi-tenant space, so we built it out as we went because it's so granular and you really got to be there with the tenants, talking to the tenants, involved with the tenants. Listen, the only way you get behind on AR with these guys is not being in their face and talking to them. You got to be friends with them. They got to feel like, not paying you is not paying, like not honorable, and that's how you get. And once you get that relationship and you get rid of the dead wood when you buy the asset, smooth sailing. You're great. But you got to stay involved. You got to stay engaged. You got to stay present. You can't be just sitting down, like you said, like, oh, how many days do I have to go to the site? Is it a hybrid schedule? Can I work from home? It's property management's not work from home. I'm sorry, you just can't do it.
No.
What we do, we give the guys like 1 day a week they can do hybrid, right? So 1 day a week they can work home, but that's what we can do with property management people. We can't do more.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a hands-on business. I mean, it's definitely the unsexy part of the business. I mean, we've got our own vertically integrated property management company. I call it the necessary evil. It's just like it's a requirement in the space that we're in. Like we do not have the opportunity to hand it off to a third-party management company. There's a few in the space, and they're all horrible. And it's very granular in nature, just like what you're speaking to. We're interactive, we're engaging. Our community managers are engaging on a regular basis, daily basis with the residents, and it's not just a hands-off approach. It's not a sit back and everyone sends their rent checks in on time. Just doesn't happen. I wish it did, but unfortunately, that's not the case.
If that was it, the opportunity would be easy. There'd be a lot of institutional guys coming in to do it very easily, and that's the
Yeah.
problem. In the sectors where there's still yield, where you're still chasing profits and you're able to make money, it's usually a hard lift.
Yep.
I mean, it's got to be, what people will be doing it already.
Yep. So as far as finding new opportunities, is it mostly broker relationships? Is that where a lot of the new deals come from?
I mean, thankfully, because of doing things like this with you, right? We've been getting a good relation. We've been getting a good word of mouth presence in the community, and in the broker community, in the buying community, and we've closed on every deal we put on the contract and went hard on everyone we've closed. So I mean, that gives us the kind of credit that we need with the brokers and the off-market guys. So most of the stuff we're buying now actually never hits the market. It's usually just brought to us before as a first look and say, do you guys want a shot at this? If you do, we'll hold it, give us an offer. And that's what thank God most of the stuff we've been seeing is. Like right now we have about 3 or 4 deals in Orlando we're chasing. They're not even for sale.
Yeah.
The owners are talking to us, because they're not against selling, but their plan was to wait 2 more years, something like that, till the market got better. So if we give them the number, if we give them a number close to what they want, that makes sense. We'll buy it and we'll transact. And that's what we've been finding a lot of success in, because when the stuff gets marketed, it starts getting a little bit, the price gets driven up sometimes for people that aren't even serious.
Yeah.
they'll call us back 6 months later. Oh, you guys want this deal? Fill out a contract. And like we'll say, we told you it was going to fall out of contract. There's no one's going to give them equity if they're paying that much, And like a lot of the guys are getting that that's the truth now because listen, 2 years ago, you know how it was. It might have worked. They might have got money so cheap it might have worked. But now it's like a lender's going to ask you, does this work? Like I can't give you, and then they're going to go raise the money with 40% leverage. They're going to be like, well, why am I doing this? And that's what's happening on a lot of these deals we're seeing.
Interesting. And what's the average deal size that you guys are doing in this space?
So we have right now we have like two distinct pools of capital we're buying the multi-tenant stuff with. We just raised a fund, the small fund, like $40 million, small total, discretionary. We can do what we want with it, buy assets. We bought 3 already with that. That's half deployed. We have about $1 million left in it, so pretty successful. We sell less than a year. So that one we're going to deploy. That we're buying assets. We tried 10 million or under, 12 million or under. So those are small deals. 100,000 square feet to 50 to 100,000 square feet, something like that. And those we've been buying in the periphery of the bigger sites we've been buying. So we get that cost, the scale of management down. So like, let's say we have one property manager now, they're spread over double the amount of square feet, the people are paying less. Our investors are getting a better return. And then we've been buying deals, call it from as low as 20 million up to 70 million. And those have been with a private equity investor, some kind of stretch senior with a co-GP group, something like that. And that's where we bought most of the assets with.
Got it. And that'd be more like a business park. I mean, as far, okay.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen like if the deal's over 100, we lose because you attract money that will make a lot less than we're willing to make. If that makes sense.
Sure.
You start attracting that true core money that's okay with a 5 or 6% return.
Yep. So, switching gears here before we work to wrap things up, Anthony. There's always you've been in business, nearly three decades. There's always that one, maybe more than one, but there's always that one deal that kind of sticks in the back of your mind. It was the biggest pain in the ass. You lost the most sleep over it. Gave you the most stress. Whatever the case was, right? But it got ingrained into your soul, and not for a good reason, right? But when I say those things, what deal comes to mind? Maybe give us the particulars on it. Was it a deal that you lost money on? Why was it so challenging? How'd you overcome the challenges? So what comes to mind?
Yeah. So just remember, I've only been doing really deals myself for the last 3 years, right? The rest of it's been,
fair enough.
But I'm gonna give you some funny things that happened, then I'll give you some deal stuff. So like when I was running at Left Right, I was the general contractor and the owner. We were an in-house GC. We did everything. So like a super called me one day. He goes, "We collapsed the pier." I go, "What do you mean?" And they put too much dirt on a pier. They collapsed the whole pier into the Hudson River. Like that's happened before. Things like that have happened. Everyone thinks they're getting fired. That doesn't happen. I mean, when I was really young, and my dad was at Left Right as well before me for 50 years, right? One of the guys that worked for him drove the piles off an easement line, not off the property line. Every pile in the job was 10 feet off.
Oh my God!
Like things like that have happened before. Like there's a lot of things like that happen, and people don't realize it. And it's probably in every building. There's always something like that, and it's kind of scary, but it's interesting how you fix it. So that's the construction side like that. The deal here, I mean, the first one we did into the DST channel with our private equity partner. A DST is a Delaware Statutory Trust. Have you heard of it? So it's like a 1031 fund.
Yep.
For people who don't know what it is. We were putting our first one, so our first transaction. And we had a non-institutional seller who didn't understand like a large CMBS lender loaning to a fund, how it works. And they were sending us estoppels that the guy was in default. Like the whole thing was like, and he was only in default because they tried to do the cam wreck because they wanted to get the money from the year before, trying to be cheap, like the week before we closed. Like it was just crazy stuff going on. That was like probably the toughest deal because like I don't think they understood what they were doing to themselves.
Right.
They could have lost the whole deal. Like, what I'm saying? And like, we're talking about a couple of $1,000s a tenant. It was like no money. I was getting paid $30 million. Like it was like, and they owed nothing. It was like, the whole thing was like comical. And like, that's what you get with a lot of these old school, like,
mom and pops.
Mom and pop sellers. They want that 2,000 that they owed for Cam. And like, I want the $2,000. And it's like, guys, you're making $30 million. Like sometimes you got to weigh the benefits, risk versus reward, and they don't do it. I mean, those are scary deals. But we have a lot of that. Like a lot of that happens when you really listen. If you really want the most bang for the buck, the most growth in yield, the most you got to deal with some hairy stuff.
That's right.
And when you do that, you could get 400 to 500 basis point growth. You could get that, but you got a lot of work going through forensic accounting, figure out what the hell's going on, and doing it. But we found that sometimes it's better to do like a little bit better put together stuff with a little bit better records than trying to go that hairy. Because listen, number one,
It's
the exit's harder too, right? Kevin, you know how it works.
yeah.
Even if you make an institutional, it's still not there. They want like historicals. You don't have historical. You have what they gave you. You know what I'm saying? So it's like we're dealing with that right now. We're doing DST2, and like it's one of the first assets that was like. So they go, "Where's the 3 years of historicals?" I go, "We owned it for a year. There is no." Well, what did you get from the seller? I go, "Here's the spreadsheet. It's like
Yeah,
one
yeah.
Excel sheet, you know." I'm like,
Handwritten ledger.
that's what it is. And it was probably accurate, but that's all you got. And like you had to deal with it.
Yeah.
That was the hardest deal. The one that we did, DST one, was pretty complicated. It was the first one we did. It was a lot of things, but thank God we haven't lost money on one deal.
Yeah, no, that's right. I've got plenty of those deals that fall right into that bucket that you're speaking to. In fact, one that comes to mind about a year ago, a phenomenal deal, but it literally was a manufactured housing community. The guy happened to build like 6 garages in the middle of this community. And it was right in the middle of the community because he built this thing 45 years ago. Gorgeous community, phenomenal location. And he had classic cars. And literally this deal almost died. Like he absolutely is like, I want the right in the contract. The guy's he's like 83. I mean, for all I know, he could live to be 103. He could live another 20 years, right? But it had to be written into the contract that literally he got those garages. So we had to put special carve outs in the insurance. I mean, literally for this garage that sat on the same parcel ID as the park. I mean, like to eliminate liability from us, him having his classic car business in these garages and all these finicky things just to get this deal done. But like he was like, I'm not doing the deal unless I get these garages. That's it. Like we don't have to argue about this anymore, right? And so it's just kind of funny looking at how these old mom and pops kind of do things. And he got what he wanted, and it worked out for all of us. I mean, it was a phenomenal deal. We're killing it with it. It's a great opportunity. But again, his financials as well. I remember getting financials from him. He had to fax them. You know, he's like, I had to go create a digital fax number because I have not used the fax machine. I don't own a fax machine, right? And so I had to actually sign up for like eFax or whatever because he was faxing all the handwritten ledgers over to us, all the handwritten financials, rent rolls, all that. I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, I had to piece it all together and basically recreate it, right, and do our best to recreate it. So
It's
it's all
it's
it's all part of the story.
it's very comical with the mom and pop guys. I mean, like
Yeah.
I'll tell you one more funny thing, like DST2 that we're doing now. When we first bought it, he had like a slight easement thing. Like it was probably like 6 inches over the neighbor's property, right? So I'm like, it's nothing. Get the guy to sign this. It's like a one-page like letter from them saying that they forgave it. They'll never tear it down, right? He goes, I hate those guys. I'm like, buddy, this is your fault. I had to go see the neighbors, negotiate them to sign these two things myself
Oh,
because he
that's
wouldn't
funny.
do it. And he was there for like 25 years. Like it's just insane. Like the little like picky uni things that they get involved
Yep.
with. Like there's all these like there's this drama going on between some of these guys for years and years and years. It's crazy. And it's like I just don't get it. Like even up here in Armonk, we're building something in Westchester, a self-storage building and a warehouse, fully leased, right? The two guys, the guys I bought the building from were fighting with another Italian guy in town, and they were like two old. They're bumping heads. I'm like, guys, this isn't like Sicily like 100 years ago. I go, everyone's making money. I don't understand the problem here. Like, so we had to make peace. We had to sign an agreement. It was like a whole thing, and it's like a lot of that still goes on with the old school mentality guy, especially when they made it themselves. When it's their money in the
Absolutely.
first generation. It's a lot of like a lot of that bull is still there. Like you got to bust through everything to get your money. It's and that you can't get rid of. Listen, it's probably one of the traits that made them all successful, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. No, that's funny. Yeah, that's interesting. I knew that it exists in other sectors. I mean, I thought we were, self storage used to be very similar to that in manufactured
Yeah,
housing, right? Where it
yeah,
was
it
all
was.
mom and pop. I mean, just lots of old generational owners. And I think it's not fully consolidated, but I mean, it's well on its way there. But I never really actually considered that being the case in the industrial space. So I'd never given thought to it. So that's interesting to hear that you've got a lot of the same challenges and qualms that we go through on a daily and weekly basis, putting deals
Yeah, I mean
together.
that's the really
That's why we
multi.
get. That's why we get paid the big bucks, right?
That's right. But that's you know, everyone hears industrial. They think it's like Lake Link or like the huge 1 tenant million square feet things. There's a lot of industrial that isn't like that, guys.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of it's
So,
small mom and pop, like the family owned businesses, the small business owner.
well, Anthony, you guys have a lot of great things going on. For those that are listening today that want to learn a little bit more about you and Basis and just the company and different opportunities that exist, where's the best place to track you down and learn more?
Yeah, you go to baseindustrial.com or basespace.com.
Base, what was that? Basisindustrial.com?
Baseindustrial.com or basespace.com.
Base space. Okay. Like
Base Space. That's our management. That's our property management company, BAYSPACE.com.
Got it. Okay, guys, we'll put that in the show notes. And Anthony, it's been fun having you, my friend. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing the story, and wishing you guys all the best success here over the coming years. And we'll circle up here maybe a year or two and see how you guys are doing. Okay.
Yeah. Great, Kevin. Thank you so much.
Have a great day, guys. That's all we have for this week's show. So until we meet again next week, this is your host Kevin Bupp, wishing you huge success. Take care now.